Well, I think we're live. So I'm going to begin by asking people just to type into chat where you're coming in from. I'd love to know what time zone everyone's in. I'd love to know what your geographic location is. So just go ahead and write in chat there where you are. I'm going to, oh, Kailua Kona.
We were
Love
just
it.
talking about Hawaii. How cool.
Hawaii. And I sometimes am the guest minister at the Unity Church in Kailua Kona. So,
Ooh, Michigan, Arizona, Canada.
yeah,
Neat.
okay. These are all punctual people. And punctual people, there also are some less punctual people. So, we appreciate you being punctual. San Diego,
Yes, San
cool, at
Diego.
Orange, Chamonix, Washington State, Michael, and hey, y'all. Hi, y'all. I can speak Texan too. Y'all come back now here.
Brazil, Sao Paulo.
Sao
Welcome.
Paulo, Atlanta.
Netherlands,
Hey, Lot. Ann
Santa
Arbor, Santa Cruz
Cruz.
Mountains. Where in the Santa Cruz Mountains, Michael? Because I know
I
Bonnie
wonder.
and Boulder Creek and all those places where Heart Math is.
Oh, La Honda.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. Vancouver.
Greece. So, Maria, let's see. What time is it your time now? It's 8:09 p.m. your time, I'm guessing. I'm glad the time zone works for you. Julie, I shudder to think what time it is in New South Wales, Australia. Let me think now. I guess it's really early morning there. Framingham, Framingham, Massachusetts, home of the famous Framingham Heart Study, begun in the 1960s, still going on today, gathering demographic data from people. Now, 5 generations of people have gone through the Framingham Heart Study, giving us multi-generational perspectives on their happiness, on their health, on their habits. It's an amazing study. Bowling Green, Kentucky, Vancouver, British Columbia, Gulf Coast, Mississippi, another y'all. Walala, Aro, so good to see you.
Oh, Andy, I just did a workshop at Esalen just about 2 weeks ago or so called The Healing Keys out of the book. So hopefully we'll do one again next year.
Saskatchewan.
Ooh, wonderful.
Oh, Mike, you also have a show on healthylife.net. Cool. Shamini was my guest on my show on healthylife.net yesterday.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm honored to have all this time with you, Dawson.
It's wonderful. Yeah. We were just joking yesterday how we wish we had 5 more hours.
Yeah,
So,
normally we're trying to squeeze in conversations in the middle of teaching together or something when we do workshops together. That's been really fun. So this definitely feels like a blessing. Many blessings of the pandemic, right? To be
yes.
able to have these kinds of conversations.
And I've been surprised, Shamini, too, how heartfelt our conversations often are. Like, I've just talked to 3 friends this week on Zoom, and all 3 times, even though it's been Zoom, we've just felt so emotionally bonded. So
Hmm.
it's possible to have that happen, even remotely.
Hmm.
Manitoba, Canada, Newport Beach, California, Worcester, Massachusetts. Again, if you're just joining us now, go ahead and write into chat where you are zooming in from. I'm just chuckling because 2 years ago, at the very beginning of a call like this, I would have had to explain to everybody how to use Zoom. Remember those days when no one knew how to use Zoom? Now my 94-year-old great grandmother can use Zoom. Too funny. Detroit, the Jersey Shore, LA, Derby, England. Okay, cool. Well, thanks. Late at night there. I'm glad you're joining us, Catherine. Monrovia, California. Susan, I have to confess I don't know where Monrovia is, but I'll make sure I look it up. Greece, okay. Northern Virginia, Denver, Pinole and East Bay. Well, I'm just so thrilled we have people from all over,
Mm.
and it's just a joy to welcome you here. And we're going to have just a ton of fun here. And I'm going to encourage you to post questions in chat as Shamini and I are talking. I'll introduce us in a moment. If you have no idea who either of us are, you will know soon. And then post questions in chat. We'll go ahead and use those as our feedback loop for sharing with you. And we are here to celebrate this, the birth of Shamini's very, 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 very first book called Healing Ourselves. So my name is Dawson Church. I'm the author of 3 best-selling science books, The Genie in Your Genes, Mind to Matter, and Bliss Brain. And so I have just been delighted to meet Shamini, as we've both been speakers at various conferences over the last decade or so. And then when we talked, it's wonderful to really find a connection in the heart and also in the head. We talk about science and molecules and brain waves and all kinds of empirical phenomena, and yet it's also deep in the heart. And isn't it the best thing too when you have a connection in the head, connection in the mind, also connection in the heart? And Shamini, of course, is the founder of the Consciousness and Healing Initiative. You're all members of that. You are all here for Ask Me Anything. And so go ahead and type your questions in chat as you have them. But we'll cover a little bit about what the book covers. And then we'll, after we review the science, talk about some of the stories, some of the practices. We'll actually do a couple of simple practices with you as well. And we'd be delighted to answer your questions. So it's good to have you here, whether you are listening live or on the replay. It's just great to have you here. There's no time or space anyway. Albert Einstein says these are illusory phenomena, albeit persistent ones. So whatever time and place you're listening from, we welcome you. It's good to have you here. And so what we'll dive deep into here is this concept, which Shamini uses as a frame for her book, Healing Ourselves. This frame is the biofield. And what I so like in the book, one of the many things that Shamini does early on in the book, is she talks about how the biofield is a concept that allows us to weave in ancient practices, acupuncture, the aura, chakras, energy flows in the body, weave these ancient concepts of human energy systems in with modern ones. When you go into hospital, you might get an EEG or an EKG or an EMG or an MRI or a CAT scan or a SPECT scan. All of these are ways of looking into the body using energy. And when energy changes, matter changes. Matter and energy are inextricably linked. And we're now using science to try and work out those relationships. One of the cool things I do in my live workshops is I show people an acupuncture chart. Now, an acupuncture chart, this is a 2,000-year-old scroll from China, looks really esoteric. There's this Chinese dude standing there. There were always men for some reason, no women in the ancient Chinese acupuncture charts. And there's this dude standing there with a pigtail and a funny hat. And then there are these lines of force running down his body and little dots where the acupuncture meridians are. And this chart is more than 2,000 years old. So 2,000 years ago, this was a known thing, energy flowing through the body. They didn't call it the biofield back then, but they knew about energy for healing. So I show people the chart, old, weird, esoteric, funky thing, energy, this invisible energy stuff. How could that be real? Then I grab a little modern device called a galvanometer that measures the charge on your skin. And I get a volunteer from the audience, and I run the galvanometer over their skin. And it's usually quiet. Nothing can be heard on the galvanometer. When it hits an acupuncture point, it goes crazy, starts to beep, lights flash, bingo. We found an acupuncture point. They're a millimeter around. They're teeny, teeny, tiny little points, and they are in the exact same points shown on that 2,000-year-old acupuncture chart. Is that amazing or what? So we're now using modern instrumentation to actually show that these energy flows exist and they're right where those ancient wise women and men figured out they were. So the biofield concept that Shamini uses at the beginning of the book is really a great framing for bringing those ancient traditions into modern use and combining them with the modern energy flows we measure using devices like our EEG or our MRI. So Shamini, with that, let's go ahead and start our conversation off with that wonderful concept of the biofield.
You bet. Well, it was so interesting to hear you describe the biofield in the way that you just did, Dawson, because truly I think this Western term that we've used for the biofield, which really grew in science, as many people know, or if you didn't know, it was really coined a couple of decades ago by several colleagues in the biofield science space, including Beverly Rubik and others, at a National Institutes of Health meeting. And the way they described the biofield at that time was a massless field, not necessarily bioelectromagnetic, that essentially I think they use terms like that guides the homeodynamic functioning of a living organism, something like that, all that science speak. When I describe the biofield, I simplify it a little bit because what it is that we're discovering is that there are fields of energy and information that connect us and heal us. And I mean, that's really my full take home when I look at the data. So whether we're looking at studies in bioelectromagnetics, where we're looking at light and sound approaches, for example, for treating things for Alzheimer's disease or even Parkinson's. Now we're looking at transcranial focused ultrasound to ablate certain tissue or, including plaques, right, in Alzheimer's. We're looking at that, our potential treatments. That's biofield medicine, right? That's part of working with the biofield. And then, of course, all these ancient practices that have existed for millennia are part of the biofield. The biofield understanding underlies Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, Tibetan medicine, all these medicines. And the modern approaches that we use now, these so-called subtle energy therapies, they're also part of the biofield. And they aren't really directly measurable. It's not like we have really figured out how to exactly measure our chakras. Now, there's instruments out there, and Dawson, that there's several of them out there that say that they're measuring some aspect of the chakras, for example, or our meridians. And truly what we're doing is we're measuring some kind of bioelectromagnetic signal that may be related to those subtle energy flows in the way that you just described, right? So we have things like the acupuncture meridian identification apparatus or the BioWell, which a lot of folks use, and they're kind of inferring those really subtle aspects. But when we look at the biofield, the most important thing for me is it's really helping us understand how connected we are. Truly how connected we are, right? Because now we're sifting through this amazing data that comes not only from clinical studies, which are so important. There are over 400 clinical studies of biofield therapies out there, published peer-reviewed studies of these biofield therapies, these so-called subtle energy therapies. And we see the impact on pain, anxiety, trauma. I mean, you know this well, Dawson, right? We're also seeing this effect in humans in physiology, looking at things like positive shifts in hormonal states, inflammatory immune states. And then, as I detail in Healing Ourselves in the book, we're seeing some really wonderful and fascinating patterns in the data, even looking at cell studies and animal studies right now, where we're able to trace the impact of human emitted bioenergy in these cell and animal models, all the way down to tracking reductions in tumor migration, in some cases even shrinkage of tumors, down to cytokine expression or inflammatory immune cytokine expression, and signaling molecules like protein kinases. So we're really starting to start to scratch the surface of understanding how this very mysterious biofield energy that we can't quite measure directly is still having this effect all the way down to our cell signaling. It's fascinating. And to me, I can look at all that, and there's so many places to go with that, right? I mean, my colleague, Richard Hammerschlag, is deeply, deeply interested in the area of biofield physiology, really helping us understand how energy is getting under the skin. To me, as a clinician, I kind of step back and I think, wow, our consciousness is so powerful. Isn't that the point? And as Richard likes to say, I don't end here. I don't end at my skin. My consciousness reaches out and expands and touches you. And I can make a conscious choice of how I want to show up and how I want to share my energy. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is having an effect on everything around us, all the people around us, the whole world around us, and these interactions, both from the fields outside of us impacting us and our field impacting other people, are powerful. And I just want to underline something you said here. So earlier, we were looking at things like psychological change in symptoms like pain or autoimmune symptoms, and that's fairly easy to measure. We can give you a questionnaire and we can see if your anxiety and depression and PTSD and phobias and other psychological conditions have gone down as a result of doing energy therapy. What's happening now that's new, and what Shamini covers brilliantly in the book, is what's going on much more deeply at the level of our physiology. So we know when our mood changes, things like cortisol drop. So if you get happier, if you get less depressed and anxious, you have a drop in cortisol. You have a rise in things like DHEA. You have a rise in immunoglobulins, which protect your body from viruses and bacteria. So all of these things are going on inside the body, inside the cell, and we're measuring those. Why are we measuring those so much later than changes in mood, pain, and other phenomena like that? It's because those are easy to measure. Physiological things are harder to measure, and it takes a while to figure out the psychology and then translate that into meaningful targets of research in biology and start to do that research. It's also very expensive to do that research. So if you're a donor, thank you. So we are now much more moving to work out the details of how these things work. And it's showing that they're producing massive change inside the body. Shamini has covered several studies in detail in the book showing that we have these shifts in our cells, in enzymes, and hormones, and all kinds of molecules in our body as a result of changes in energy and consciousness, which is invisible, having all these visible shifts in our body. And that is just beyond exciting.
It really is, because in this day and age where we're kind of, many of us feel powerless, right, around our health. Maybe the people here sitting with us, you're maybe more in the know than a lot of folks, but even some of our fellow healthcare providers, right? They're feeling quite powerless. And so when we look at these studies, we realize how much our energy matters, how much our consciousness matters, and how much power we have, right, to heal ourselves and others. I mean, and we can look at this, Dawson, from all the way from placebo. As you know, I have this, really comprehensive and exploratory chapter on what placebo is really telling us about our ability to heal, and what we call these mind-body therapies, right? All the way down to these emitted bioenergy studies. And for the mainstream, this is really new. This is not something that they are connected with at all. And I just want to name, for those of you who may have just recently joined the Consciousness and Healing Initiative, one of the reasons we started the Consciousness and Healing Initiative was really to help support this field and support the work of all of our fellow scientists and healing practitioners, because we know that many of you are already out there delivering services in clinics, in hospitals. Sometimes you come across blocks or walls where people say, well, there's no evidence. Well, part of the reason for writing this book was really to put all of this together in one place, so that if you are a healthcare practitioner or a healing practitioner, you have a resource now where you can easily, first talk about it, share with people in a way that's really palatable and easy for them to read. I mean, there are over 700 references in this book, but I purposely wrote it in a book format because, we have our wonderful reports on healing and things like that, but sometimes they're a little dry for people. They can't really relate. So the book is a little bit more relatable. It includes patient stories, but it also has 700 peer-reviewed published references. So I have a lot of friends actually handing this book to their fellow doctors and nurses and, and other folks in the hospitals and other places, so that people can feel comfortable with this. I mean, this is part of the thing, is we're socializing the biofield kind of more broadly with people, so that the biofield doesn't have to be the best kept secret in science, right? It really has. It's been like this best kept secret, and it doesn't really make any sense to keep it secret at this point.
Just tell a couple of those stories from the book, because there are such powerful stories of healing in the book. And I'd love to just give the science and the statistics flesh and blood in the form of some of the people that healed from energy healing.
You bet. So, in the beginning of the book, for those of you who've begun reading the book, thank you. And I really appreciate all the positive feedback. And please do keep sending me pictures of yourself holding the book. I absolutely love them, they're just wonderful. You know, in the beginning of the book, I actually start out by relating a story that was told to me at dinner one day. And this was a couple I had just met. They didn't know me. They didn't know what I did. They had no idea what I did for a living, what my passions were, or anything. But for some reason, the father felt compelled to sit down with me and basically tell me the story of his daughter. And in a nutshell, and I described this in detail in the book, they found out when she was 2.5, completely shockingly, that she had a brain tumor. You know, she was throwing up. They thought, you know, she had a virus or something like that, maybe a GI upset. They waited a couple days to see if it would remit. It didn't. And so they took her to the doctor and they were shocked to find out she had a brain tumor, and there was no family history. There was nothing. So you can imagine how they felt. And they did everything that they could do. And, you know, they went straight away for radiation therapy, and that seemed to help. You know, the tumor shrunk, but then it came back. And this time it came back in an area of the brainstem where the doctor said, "We're sorry, we can't operate. If we operate here, she's going to die. And we don't know what to do at this point, and we think she probably has about 6 months to live. We're so sorry." So you can imagine how devastated they were. And, you know, being parents, they weren't going to just blindly accept this. You know, they were going to keep searching and say, "Okay, we understand why you're saying that, but we're going to keep figuring out what we can do. There must be something we can do." And they had a friend come to them and say, "I know this sounds crazy, but I know a healer in Israel." And in the book, I detail the story of this healer because it's really quite touching. She was a baby survivor of the Holocaust, and her story itself is quite incredible. Long story short, they connected with this healer in Israel. And what I love about this is when Devan, who, and I am going to interview Devan for anybody who is listening, and many people are asking, "Okay, we want to know more about the story." You're going to get more information on the story because Devan has agreed to an interview with Chi. So we will be asking him in detail about the story and learning more about their healing journey. But in a nutshell, when they asked the healer, Sarah, you know, what is your process? Like, what is it you're going to do? You know, we've never done energy healing before. We don't really know what to expect. She said, "Listen, let me explain something to you. First of all, I'm not doing the healing. Mira is the healer. All I am doing is reconnecting Mira with her soul self, and Mira's soul will decide what happens next. But I'm going to give you some advice. I'm going to tell you how to create a healing environment, how to create, you know, a positive, emotionally supportive environment, some things that she can eat that may be helpful for her." And so she did all that. She gave them advice on all that, and she worked with Mira spiritually and energetically for several months. And remember, Mira's just a 2.5-year-old child. She's a toddler at this point. Long story short, you know, they noticed that Mira didn't seem to be having as many symptoms. They did everything to just kind of keep her comfortable with care, loving parents. They, you know, they had regular sessions with Sarah, and these were, of course, at a distance. They're in California. Sarah's in Israel. And then 6 months later, they take Mira for her checkup with the doctors, and the doctors are shocked because the tumor is completely gone. And they have no explanation for how this could have happened. So Devan and Meda, the parents, you know, told them, they said, "Well, we know this is crazy, but here's what we've been doing. And we've been working with this healer, and she's been advising us to do these things, you know, in terms of keeping the environment clean and the emotional energy clean. And she's been working with her energetically." And the doctor said, "This is a miracle. And we're not averse to believing in miracles. This is certainly a miracle." So then, you know, I think scientists like us come in and we say, "A miracle. Yes, well, life is a miracle. Everything is a miracle." But why is it that we just sit with these stories and we say, "Oh, that's beautiful. That's a miracle." And we don't say, "What just happened? Something amazing just happened. Is there any way we can capture and understand what just happened so that we can make this less of an anomaly and more of a reality for people?" Because we don't have to eschew modern medicine. We don't have to say nobody has to get chemotherapy or radiation. That's not what we're about. Let's jump out of the either or thinking, right? And there's something profound happening here that
Yeah,
we ought to
and
understand scientifically, right?
and we write those things off as anecdotal or one-offs, and we should be studying them intensively. That patient who beats the odds for a form of cancer that's uniformly fatal, that person whose body is shattered and is able to repair it, we should be focusing on this and then harvesting this knowledge and sharing it with everybody. So those times are coming, and I'm so encouraged when I see things like medical Reiki. I see EAT and energy medicine practitioners in hospitals. I see EFT practitioners who I've trained, and like we got approved by the VA in 2017 after 10 years of beating our heads against the wall. But and after 10 years, eventually they said, okay, you can do EFT in the VA. So now it's in a hospital system. I so want more and more of these therapies to be available to people right where they're suffering, and to be systematized, to train
Yes.
people in this. And it's possible now to train somebody. You take people, you train them in those energy healing methods, and they're able to do that with others. So we're entering this new phase. We're still in the messy middle. We aren't there yet, but we're getting there. I think what we should do now is look at some of the questions, go there. Also, the book's website. So you know that Shamini's website is chi.is, but if you go to the book's website, it's healingourselvesbook.com. And if you've already picked up a copy and jumped into it, you'll realize it's extremely well written. It's well paced. Things are clearly explained. It's a beautifully written book. So go ahead and leave a 5-star review. And we were joking yesterday on my podcast that Shamini cannot ask you to do this. She cannot ask you to leave a 5-star review on Amazon, because it's against Amazon's rules. For an author or the publisher can't do it, the author can't do it, but I can do it, so I am.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Dawson. And I have to say, just for me, it's so helpful to get the feedback, to understand what this book is doing for you, how you sit with it, even gaps, things like that. And if you go to healingourselvesbook.com, what's cool about that is we do have it set up so that if you haven't bought the book yet, we have bonuses for you. So that's really awesome. And there's several bonuses. Yes, it is available in audiobook and also on Kindle, and it's available everywhere. If you go to healingourselvesbook.com, you'll see that you can order it from there, many places, Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble, but also thrift books, Goodreads, some independent bookstores. You can pretty much get it anywhere. You can get the audiobook from Sounds True, and you can of course get it on Kindle, but do dive into those bonuses. Please do fill out the bonus form. All it is you're just going to say, you bought the book, and you'll get an email that will take you to our bonuses page. And on that bonuses page, we have some really wonderful videos with our fellow colleagues. Many of you know, Donna Eden, David Feinstein, Deepak Chopra, Bruce Lipton, lots of folks. And I have a bonus chapter. So I want to tell you all this. And for those of you who bought the book, please do go to, and I'll try to put this in the chat. We have a book resources page for you, because the one chapter I wasn't able to put in the book because Sounds True said, we have word limits, Shamini, and this chapter that you have is really more like an ebook because it's 75 pages. It's all on Biofield devices. So I have a bonus chapter for all of you. When you buy the book, it is a free ebook. The 75 pages, by the way, 25 of them are references. So it's really only 50 pages, and it's actually I have clickable links for you so that you can dive into what do we know about biofield devices, including things like non-invasive brain stimulation devices, but also some of the more subtle energy devices, so because that's out there too. So it's a great resource for everybody. I'm really pleased to offer it free, for everyone who has bought the book. Thank you so much for your support. So if you do it through healingourselvesbook.com, that's great, because that'll take you to the bonuses, and that's easier. But you can go straight to your favorite bookseller and get it there too.
Yeah. And then as far as the practices we'll share with you, I think we'll do those at the end, because you're going to feel really good after that. And rather than getting our minds re-engaged with the question and answers, we'll answer the questions now, then we'll do the practices to wrap up at the end. So I'm going to ask you a few. There are some in chat, Shamini, and then there are some in Q&A. You can put them at either place. And
yeah, that's great. And I just wanted to say thank you, Annie, saying I'm a biofield tuner and healing energy worker, and your book, In Depth of Research, is helping support my conversations with clients about what is happening. Thank you. I love that feedback because that's why I wrote this. Because this should just be a resource for everybody. And, we're all exploring what's the best way for us to talk about this so-called best kept secret. So many of you are doing amazing work and the evidence is there. So I'm so pleased that you're finding this useful to open up the conversation because that's really what we need to do at this point.
I'm going to take the questions first that are more generally applicable. Like someone's asking about gluten and dairy intolerance, and there are some answers about that, but I'm going to stick with ones that I think will appeal to the biggest number of people first. And so Musa is asking about these machines and these devices versus working using consciousness and your own energy. And how do you see the machines working in terms of when to use a machine, when to use a device, and when to engage in a behavioral or spiritual practice?
Great question. And I do talk about this and give practical advice in that free ebook that I just mentioned. But in a nutshell, here's the deal. Whether we're using a person or a device, we need to be careful about the framework that we're operating from when we work with this stuff, right? Because whether we feel dependent on a person to write our energy system and we don't feel like we can fully do it ourselves, or whether we depend on a device, that we're probably buying into the pathogenic model. What do I mean by that? I'm powerless. I have to go outside of myself to get help. Now, let me preface this by saying, yes, sometimes we really do. Like, we go to psychotherapists for a reason. We go to doctors for a reason. We go to naturopaths for a reason. We go to energy healers for a reason, and we might use a device for a reason. If we feel that we're so out of balance, and when I say so out of balance, look, we're all out of balance right now. It's a pandemic, okay? There are things happening in the world, so this is fine. But whether we use a device or we work with an energy healer, make no mistake, what is actually happening is that we're being brought back into harmony. Okay. And we're actually the ones doing the healing. The healing is actually happening inside of us. So I would say that both of these approaches, depending on the condition, can be very helpful. We just don't want to foster an over dependency to where we don't feel like we can take care of ourselves, because ultimately we can. And let me preface this by saying, we do our studies for a reason. When I did my randomized placebo-controlled trial on energy healing for cancer-related fatigue, we chose that population because these women were so wiped out, they couldn't engage in self-care, okay? They were so exhausted, they used to exercise and meditate and things like that, and they just didn't have the energy. So receiving energy healing, in this case from a person, was really helpful. Right? But then many of them, when they got to that point where their energy was back, they were able to engage in what we call self-care practices, right? So tapping into our own energy and being able to continue to foster well-being will prevent us from getting disease. And yes, we could use devices, or we could use ourselves, or work with an energy healer to do that. I'll just add, for those of you who haven't gotten the book yet, and thank you. I don't know why so many of you are waiting for the book to be delivered, but I think that's probably a good thing. Maybe we sold out and they're ordering more. I have no idea, but hopefully you will get the book very soon. The third part of the book is the healing keys, which are self-care practices. So once we work with a device or we work with an energy healer, and we're at a place where we feel like we're connected with our energy, they're very simple self-care practices we can do. Because guess what? When we do yoga, when we do meditation, when we do mantra, when we dance, sing, all of these things, we're working with our biofields in every moment. It's a dynamic thing. So I hope that answers your question. There are, again, when you go into the devices chapter, I'm very specific about where the evidence is for each device. So you will get like that very nuanced information. This device has been shown to be helpful for pain and so on and so forth. But just remember, if you're looking for yourself, these are just meant to bring you back into harmony. And then you're going to keep harmonizing over and over.
Yes. And finding the appropriate tools to do it, and also recognizing when you're out of harmony, and then knowing which tools to look for and use to bring yourself back into harmony. There's a great question over here from Dan Fields. Dan, he's asking, how do you get around the catch-22 of a dearth of evidence because there's not enough funding, as well as a dearth of funding because there is not enough evidence.
Beautiful question, Dan. Thank you. This is why we started the Consciousness and Healing Initiative. Okay. And we started this because even when people do get funding to do their work, it's hard to publish. And then even when they publish, it's hard to get that out in the mainstream press. And I'm not just speaking about my studies here, but all of my colleagues' studies. That's actually why we initially started our nonprofit, the Consciousness and Healing Initiative, because we recognize that we need to build community among our scientists so that we can leverage all of our capabilities and laboratories. Because the way to move this forward is not just for me to do my study, or one other person to do their study, but for all of us to do our studies and pool resources. So what that means is that, we seek donations for this work, because until we get to that tipping point where we have multiple excellent high power studies, both in clinical populations for pain and anxiety and chronic disease, until we have a critical mass of those with big subject numbers, big N's as we call them, right? Lots of people. Just like mindfulness wasn't mainstream and now it is, this is what the Consciousness and Healing Initiative is doing for the Biofield work, our collaborative, which involves many scientists, healers, donors, right? We're trying to really up-level this field. So yes, we do need money. We absolutely need investment from people who know how powerful this is so that we can up-level the scientific, literature. I wouldn't even say rigor, because some of our scientists are honestly very rigorous, right? But they do need the funding support, and they need community support, because a lot of them can't even talk about this stuff with their colleagues at the university. So we serve as, as kind of a safe place. And as you know, many of the webinars and AMAs we share healing practice, but also the latest science. I can tell you many stories about that. If you are a Qi contributor, you will notice that we have a lot of amazing webinars from some of the leading researchers in our field, including Dawson, Dean Radin, Bill Bankston, Lorenza Cohen, so many others who are sharing the results of this really powerful data. So one of the ways we get around it is to make sure that whatever data is out there, we try to make it as visible as possible. We try to communicate, and then we try to raise money for studies.
Somebody else is asking, how can you get involved with research on these topics without having a PhD beyond becoming a donor? And this is also somebody who lives in a rural area, so she doesn't have access to the facilities of a big city.
Let me tell you about a project that she is currently fundraising for, because one of the gaps that we have, of course, we want to fund the scientists, but we also want to empower our healing practitioners to engage in research. So many of our fellow practitioners want to engage in research, but they're doing healing practice. They're not going to go out and get a PhD to go do the research. It doesn't even make sense. So part of what we do in our collaborative is that we help match our researchers with our healing practitioners. And so we're actually raising money right now for an app-based data collection system that healing practitioners can let their clients use, so that when they are giving the healing intervention, so to speak, when they're giving the healing, their clients can then input their responses using gold standard measurements. And we're going to collect physiological data with this too, right? And we've already talked with our partnering organizations who are willing to actually help with this. So we're going to collect all of this data and then have it in a centralized free data bank, so that researchers all over the world, we've already identified over 400 of them, right, can tap into this data bank. And these are some of the ways that everyone can get involved in the research. So, not to sound a bit like a broken record, but we will need some seed funding to get this going, right? We're going to be able to get this app going so that everyone can really participate in the research, both the practitioners and the researchers, because we have to bridge that gap and connect them.
One of the other questions here is about access, and that the people who most need energy therapies are often those to whom they're unavailable. And the whole question about privilege and about access, I mean, if you're rich, you can go and hire a bunch of healers and you can get the best medical treatment. And if you live in a country without those resources, or if you have none of those resources, or if you're in a segment of the population in a developed country that doesn't have access to those resources, also doesn't have access to them. So someone's asking about that too, and what we're doing to address that need.
Thank you. This is such an important question, especially out here in the West. It's interesting because I was chatting with a health minister in Ethiopia, and they're actually having the opposite problem where people don't want to go to the allopathic clinics. They want to see their traditional healers, right? And these are the underserved communities. So it's different across the globe. Here in the West, it's very much an elitist thing, right? Because people can't get insurance reimbursement for energy healing practices mostly yet. So one of the ways that we're bridging this gap at the Consciousness and Healing Initiative is we currently have, of course, our Healing Practitioner Council and a working group who is exploring what can we do to make this more democratizable. I don't know if that's a word, but I just said it. And part of that is exploring how do people get reimbursed for healing practice. Now, that opens up a very lively conversation, which we are going to have at the Consciousness and Healing Initiative. We have folks, that are on many different sides of the table around things like certification and licensing. And we're going to have a healthy, open discussion about that in the coming months. And I'm very excited for that. So one avenue is to be able to provide things like licensing and certification to allow more people to go into hospitals and clinics and get reimbursed. So that's one model. The other model is really to incorporate indigenous practices and healing into community clinics more readily without necessarily having to have certification and licensing. Because honestly, many indigenous spiritual healers don't believe in that. There are a lot of issues with that. It could actually backfire in terms of elevating BIPOC community and BIPOC voices in this, which we desperately need to do. So I don't think that there is a one size fits all solution, but certainly, in some cases, getting some of these healing therapies into the clinics and the hospitals, we may need to have, kind of a stronger way of being able to verify that a healing practitioner, has certain ethics, credibility, experience. And then we'll also need to be able to fund people to come into clinics and practice. And as you know, many of our spiritual healers don't actually charge for their work. But there still needs to be a level of orchestration on the community front in order to bring people in. So there's a community level, there's kind of a healthcare structure level, and then finally there's a self-care level, Dawson, which you know very well, right? That's another way that we can kind of democratize these by helping people tune into their own biofields and prevent disease before they even have to go to the hospital.
Yeah, all of those are different levels of doing it. And I know at EFT Universe, my organization, we do have certification. We actually were able to, in 2013, get accredited for American Medical Association, continuing medical education credits, American Psychological Association, American Nurses Credentialing Commission. So we've had them for almost 10 years, and it's really opened up doors. And we've also paved the way for other organizations to go the same way. So there is that level at which you get accreditation that gives you credibility in those professions. But then also there's the grassroots level. And I just this morning, actually, beforehand, was just checking out the numbers. We've just finished a count on our Veteran Stress Project about the number of veterans we've given free treatment to over the last decade. And the number was like almost 22,000 veterans. So there are all these grassroots level efforts. There's work in Haiti with earthquake survivors. There's work in Rwanda with genocide survivors. There's a ton of energy therapy happening in Guatemala, Central America. A lot of in the schools in Lima, Peru. So there are, in fact, there's a lot less opposition, a lot less entrenched opposition to energy therapies often in developing countries than there are in the West. So there's a lot of research emerging now on diabetes, on cancer, on other things in places like Malaysia and Indonesia and Iran. It's interesting how many studies are coming out of those places. I'm actually working on a paper now, Shamini, on all of this research that's going on in non-English speaking countries, and there's a ton of it. So so Shamini's absolutely right. We both need those high-level initiatives to get it in institutions. We need the volunteerism at the grassroots, and then essentially taking care of your own energy healing health. There are so many practices that are simple self-care that you can do. And we're going to wrap up in a few minutes after a couple more questions by doing some of them with you and encouraging you to do them as part of your regular self-care routine. So Marquis is asking about policy change. What about changing health policy and what's happening on that front?
Absolutely. So it kind of relates to the discussion we were just having. We do have several groups, including groups like the IHPC, the Integrative Health Policy Consortium. They're real allies of this work, and they're very deeply interested in having the biofield conversation. So there are discussions with them, and there are other groups as well that are really working to open the conversation among legislators around the incorporation of biofield practices in the clinics. But there's quite a bit that has to happen between here and there. Of course, part of our role is to help socialize the evidence with those folks, because a lot of people, again, they don't know about the evidence. That's why we're really excited about, books like the one that I just published and others, because it really helps people understand that there really is an evidence base. So that's part of it, right? And we have folks that are helping socialize the evidence base among legislators. But there's also, to be honest, there's a little bit of more internal cohesion that we need to have as a community around how we want to move forward with things like licensing, certification, safe harbor laws. And if you don't understand any of what I just said, don't worry, because we're going to be helping explain all of this in the coming months with facts, FAQs, and town hall meetings and things to discuss where we are as a community of healers on this. So policy change is imminent. Research is going to help open the door to those conversations. And just like in all professions, there's going to be a little bit more internal cohesion needed so that everyone feels comfortable with how we want to proceed, because there are a number of ways that we can, right? But if we don't have internal cohesion as a community, we can't move too far with policy changes.
It's funny, I was talking to a consultant earlier today, and he said to me, asking about EFT Universe, my organization, he said, "Who are your competitors?" I just did a double take. Well, nobody. We collaborate with everyone.
That's right. Yeah. It's a totally different framework, right? That's what I love about our field. I mean, everyone is so collaborative, they may not always agree, but that's great. I mean, isn't this the lesson of our times, that we can come together and vehemently disagree and love each other at the same time, right? We're all on the same team. And the biofield community, I think, is very much like that. I personally, I'm so grateful for the work that we do at the Consciousness and Healing Initiative, because we have these wonderful opportunities to help foster community discussion and community action in things like policy, communication, research, and education. So, I mean, I love these higher level questions. It just is telling me how involved each of you are. Thank you so much, because your work is so important, and we're working hard kind of behind the scenes, behind the webinars, behind the AMAs, to help orchestrate some of these things. I will just say also, for those of you who are interested in this and you didn't hear about the report that we published, okay, besides the book is, it's written like a book. It has stories, it has, it has practices, all these things. For those who really want to socialize the meat of this field with others, and also for yourself, go to this, I just put this in the chat, reportonhealing.com. We put together an 82-page report and a 12-page summary of the field for the Biofield Science and Healing movement. It includes, kind of snapshots of some of the best evidence, how to answer things like, is biofield healing just a placebo? How many healing practitioners do we think there are? What is the potential market share? Those numbers have already changed, by the way, so take those with a grain of salt. But there's a whole lot there. And within that, if you go to the roadmap for systems change, which is very easy to look at, we have 7 different initiatives, 7 different transformational points for the field, right, that we've identified. And practitioner empowerment, communication, policy, research, there's the technology, there's a number of things out there. A lot of you are asking, how do I get involved? Take a look at that roadmap for systems change. Thank you. Yes, it is impressive. A lot went into it. Look, this was a whole team effort. Our entire team at the Consciousness and Healing Initiative was involved. We interviewed over 60 stakeholders across different sectors to put this report together. It is a free resource for you and for the general public. So please do take a look at it and share it with folks. And for those who kind of need something that's a little bit more digestible, then you can share the book, because that's the point of that, is, to share that with more of the lay community.
I answered a couple more questions in chat there, and And as far as you being a nurse goes and this making inroads in nursing, there is also a place for energy healing in the big initiative called Healthy Nurse, Healthy Nation. So if you're a nurse and you go to Healthy Nurse, Healthy Nation, actually you can go into it if you aren't a nurse, just look it up, the American Nurses Association, and they actually have a spot there for energy healing where they're advocating energy healing for nurses for self-care, for example. And so I didn't even know who got it in there, but somebody did. And it's just wonderful to see these things popping up all over the place like that. So there are lots of them. We'll use so again, that if you want to know what I won't put it in chat, but it's called Healthy Nurse, Healthy Nation. You can go there, you can post a comment, you can advocate for energy healing in there. And it's just wonderful to have people posting links to, for example, Shamini's book, Shamini's work, to the research, all of those things. Share them widely. Share them with your doctor and nurse. Share them with your medical professional. So again, you've heard Shamini and I say at a number of junctions, it's all part of the same endeavor. There's no them and us sense that there's allopathic medicine here and there's alternative medicine here. We just don't see the world that way. We see all of these as ways of supporting your healing. And that way of supporting your healing might be surgery, might be a prescription, might be energy medicine, it might be nutrition. All of these things have a role in wellness. And what we find more and more and more is that medical professionals support and encourage people, especially who use self-care, but certainly who go to an accredited practitioner and get energy healing as well. So we're all, the goal of every healer, whether they're allopathic or conventional or alternative, is the wellness of you and me. And so that's our goal as well. So we're going to go ahead and spend the last few minutes over here and do some simple practices that help you feel this in your body. And again, we're going to encourage you to use these practices. Shamini has a number of them in the book. You can use the book as your guide and just experiment. Be in the sandbox. Be playing around with all these different energy therapies and energy techniques and find the ones that work for you. And there are lots of them. And the idea isn't that you have to do all 79 of them, but play around with different ones, different modalities, find the one that really works well for you. Which one moves you the most? Which one moves the needle for you in terms of wellness and you're feeling good the most? So experiment, try them, see which ones work for you. Find ones that work for your lifestyle. If you're a working mom and have 2 kids and have to get up early in the morning, probably 90 minutes of meditation is not going to work for you early in the morning. But maybe a little bit of self-care in some other form is going to work with you. Maybe doing your Ujjayi breath is going to work for you. Maybe doing Dada Eden's zip up and hook up is going to work for you. Maybe there are all kinds of things. Tapping takes 2 minutes to do. So there are all these other methods you can use. Experiment with them, play around with them, be open to them, but then pick something you'll really commit to and make that commitment. I know I made the commitment in 2000, more than 20 years ago, to meditating every single day. And I can tell you that is the pivot point of my life in terms of happiness, fulfillment, well-being. So it's that commitment, and we're asking you to make that commitment. Just make a commitment to doing what it takes for your well-being. So we'll show you a couple of practices now, simple ones you can use, and there are lots of others as well. But do something. Don't just be inspired here and say, that was a great program. Be inspired here, share this with other people, and practice it yourself. Set your alarm, set your calendar, if necessary, to ping you every day. Hey, I'm going to do this at 9:30 p.m. before I go to bed. I'm going to do this early in the morning before I get up and start my day. So whatever you do, make that commitment to your self-care, because you deserve it. You deserve to have a good life. And these are all ways of helping yourself do that. So, Shamini, over to you.
Oh, Dawson, if I can too, I would just like to add to that. I know many of you you're in practice. Many of you are helping others. Sometimes we do forget, to engage in our own self-care. So if you need a session from someone else, go get it. And if you need to take half an hour to meditate, do it and then notice what happens. Like sometimes we need to kind of give ourselves back the feedback. Oh, I was more productive. Oh, wow, my mood is better. So allow yourself to also notice what happens as you engage in regular self-care and engage in regular practice, that it's not, oh God, I have to do my self-care now, set my alarm. But but it's kind of like, oh, okay, now my well is full, so I can better
Yeah.
give to others, right? It's 101 for all of us, but sometimes just noticing how much better the day was when we engaged in our self-care, our spiritual practice, whatever we call it, right? That noticing will motivate our body mind to do it again and again
Yes.
and again. So
Yes, absolutely. So Shamini, you had a practice, and I have a practice to share with people.
I think it'd be lovely, Dawson, if you wanted to start off with some of the beautiful, simple practices that you mentioned that we can easily do. I think you had
Okay.
one in particular for the nervous system that you wanted to share, right?
Yeah, and personally, I do several little easy practices, and the ones I do are very physiologically based. They aren't psychological or spiritual, because people have different spiritual beliefs, and trying to get the mind to direct our bodies and our well-being is harder than just doing something physiological. So I like to do breathing exercises, which are physiological, muscle relaxation exercises, which are physiological, tapping exercises that are physiological. And so we'll just do a quick little tapping routine. It'll take under 2 minutes, and you'll measure its effects in your body. So I want you to think about something that annoyed you or bothered you or triggered you emotionally in the last 2 weeks. Don't pick something old, and do not pick something from childhood. We don't want to have a lot of trauma surfacing here. We just want to show you what you can do. So pick something from the last 2 weeks that bothered you. It could have been a movie you saw, it could have been a news story, it could have been an image, it could have been an interaction, a social interaction, but pick something that bothered you. And now I want you to write down the name of that thing in just 2 or 3 words. So if it was that image of those refugees, if it was uh, that that movie scene that really disturbed you, if it was an interaction, just write down in 2 or 3 words what was that thing that bothered you. Just brief little name for it. And then I want you to write down how big your emotional triggering is from 0 to 10, with 0 being no triggering whatsoever and 10 being the maximum possible emotion. So if your upset was a high number, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, note that down, write down your number, even if it was a low number, 3, 4, 5, 2, 1, write down your number. The reason you have to write down your number is because this is going to shift most people so quickly that they literally can't believe their eyes when they look at their first number. So you've got your issue, you've got your number. Now we'll just gently stimulate each of your acupuncture meridians, these invisible things that nevertheless are able to regulate your body's energy. So start over here. This is the small intestine meridian. Tap over here and think about that thing. And if you can say this out loud, that's fine. If you can say it in your mind, that's fine too. But say, I remember this bad thing, and I'm safe now. I'm literally safe now, and I remember this bad thing. I'm now focusing intently on remembering this bad thing, and I'm safe at this very moment. Take a breath, tap on this is your governing meridian on top of your head, and say either out loud in your mind or in your mind the bad thing. Focus on that bad thing. Tap over here. This is your bladder meridian, where your eyebrow meets the bridge of your nose. Keep your eyes open. Keep breathing. Focus on that bad thing. Tap on the side of your eye. This is your gallbladder meridian. Now tap on both eyes, sides of both eyes. Really focus on the details of that bad recent thing that upset you. Tap under your eyes. This is your stomach meridian, the bad thing. Focus intently on the details of the bad thing. Focus on the bad thing again as you tap under your nose. This is the end point of your governing meridian. Intense focus on the bad thing. Tap under your lower lip. This is your central meridian or conception vessel. Breathing, eyes open, focus intently on the bad thing. Tap on both sides of your collarbone, right below your collarbone, where it meets your breastbone. Breathing, tapping, releasing your muscles, shoulders, neck. And tap under your arms about 10 centimeters, 4 inches below your armpits. Think about the bad thing. And one more time over here on the side of hand point, the bad thing. And just notice that you're totally safe now. No, there are no tigers in the room. Only the paper tigers in your mind. Okay, take a deep breath, relax, and think about the bad thing now. Write down your new number. And then in chat, we spent 3 minutes or so on that. Just write down in chat what your first number was and what your second number was, like that. 10 to a 2, RO. Margarita went from an 8 to a 2. Susan from a 9 to a 3. Lotta from 8 to a 0. Jessica 6 to a 2. Annie 10 to a 2. Alexandria 6 to 0. Nadia 7 to 2. Dawn 5 to 1 and 10 to 2. You get the idea.
Wow,
energy,
beautiful.
Energy, no psychotherapy involved, no drugs, no pills, no shifting consciousness. And what happens are, and I tell you, your cortisol was going down, all kinds of genes are changing expression, all of these good things, and it only took 3 minutes. So make sure you have a little tool like that in your toolkit.
Yeah, so beautiful. Dawson, thank you. Oh, question about keeping eyes open versus closed. Do you have a suggestion?
Yeah, there's a whole field called memory reconsolidation and extinction. And if you keep your eyes open, you're incorporating that safety cue. You're looking around the room, there is no tiger here, and that's rewriting the neural pathways that encode trauma. I have a whole book on this, but that is the 10-second explanation.
Oh, thank you for that, Dawson. And I know many people online and watching will be familiar with your work, but for anyone who isn't familiar with your work, if they want to learn more about the kind of tapping and the teaching that you do you want to just let us know? We can throw it into the chat window so they know how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, Jason, perhaps you can just put it in there. It's tapping, like we were just doing, tappinggift.com. And there's a free EFT mini manual there, as well as a free immunity meditation there. So tappinggift.com. And Loretta, it's memory reconsolidation and extinction. Extinction is extinguishing all that negative emotion.
Great. And then I guess some of you must be new to us, which is wonderful. Thank you for joining us. So somebody had asked for the website for the Consciousness and Healing Initiative. I've just put that also in there. You know, we have these gatherings. This was a unique one because usually I'm hosting. I get the pleasure usually of asking Dawson and folks like him questions. So this was kind of fun for me to be an interviewee instead of the interviewer. But do join us. We have these often, you know, every month. And sometimes twice a month, honestly. So we get to talk with leaders in the field like Dawson and others. They're totally free. We do ask, as we mentioned, you know, we raise money for things like research, education. Thank you to all of you who have already joined us as a Chi contributor. Lydia, thank you. Thank you for becoming a Chi contributor. It is a modest investment of time, energy, and love of $108 a year or $9 a month. I guarantee you're going to get much more nutrition out of this than, say, 2 Starbucks a month. And you probably can't even get 2 Starbucks a month for $9 a month now anyway. But
Uh,
to do that, you simply go to www.chi.is/join. You access all our webinars and Ask Me Anything sessions in perpetuity for free. We also have a lot of other free resources for you. We send you free monthly meditations and kind of some of the cutting edge science. So you really get the best of healing and healing science and healing practice straight delivered to your inbox, so that you're resourced throughout the month, which is really fabulous. So thank you for everyone who joins as a Chi contributor. Somebody is asking about that ebook. If you go to healingourselvesbook.com, thank you, Anne. Thank you. I cannot wait for y'all's feedback on Healing Ourselves. And thank you for everyone who has been sharing reviews and just sharing personal feedback. I really appreciate it. It was a labor of love. I didn't think I'd be writing my first book during a cross-country move, looking for a house, putting the kids to a new school, and then the pandemic. And then, of course, we had our massive, project that happened in the middle of it too, the systems mapping project with that report on healing that I mentioned. So it's been a very full couple of years, but I wrote this so that we could all really get on the same page with understanding what the research is telling us and also how we can just engage in regular practice. So thank you for all the love that I've been getting on the book. I really appreciate it. And if you go to healingourselvesbook.com, you'll see where you sign up for bonuses there once you purchase. So thank you so much. So in the remaining couple of minutes that we have, thank you for everyone that's staying on. There was a request to actually connect in cohesively, coherently, and send some healing energy to all of our first responders and folks that are out there giving it their all right now in so many ways. So let's come together just for a minute in collective practice to connect with our healing tribe, those who are here now and those who we feel in our hearts. And so we can just take a moment to do that. And just notice your breath. No right or wrong way to breathe. Just noticing the breath as it comes into the body. Taking a moment to exhale and inhale. And then placing our attention on our heart center. Taking this moment to connect in with our collective heart. Feeling the power of the biofield that connects us with each other, with our loved ones, with spirit, with our support. Feeling the fresh new energy that comes into us with every breath. Notice just for a moment how your body feels. Let the breath touch every cell in your body, all the way down to the feet, so that your breath is touching down to the toes, your feet, your ankles, your calves, your thighs, your sit bone, your tailbone, your hips, your belly, your heart center. Your breath is touching your shoulders down the arms. Your breath is touching your throat and your neck. And your breath is traveling up the head, all the way up through the crown. Feel the nourishment of your breath your prana centered here in your body. And now, from this place of centeredness, groundedness, and ease, bring into your heart any person that you wish to send healing light to. Just let them come into your consciousness. Feeling the support of our group here, the support of your spiritual guides and presence. And just let that light come through you to the person that's in your heart. And know that the biofield is so powerful that this light that has been sent can continue to fill this person with ease, joy, grace, and healing. Giving thanks for our collective practice and this beautiful field of love that we are co-creating together. When you're ready, if you've had your eyes closed, you can open them. It was a little brief. I apologize for that, but I also want to thank all of you who hung around for this extra 10 minutes to share in some practices with us and who shared in the hour of this lively conversation. I'm always so inspired by all of you and the questions that are being asked, and it feels really good to know that we're all in this together. So thank you. And Dawson, thank you so much for being here and for hosting and for sharing your light and wisdom.
Oh, I felt that breath entering my hands and my feet as you were saying that. And then as you were talking about the field of all of us, I felt our collaborative field. So I'm so grateful that we are part of this great field of people, of consciousness, of energy, of goodwill. And we can literally reach out and feel that around us now. So thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Shamini, for your passionate, smart, dedicated work. And I know the world is changing fast in a wonderful direction in many ways. And we are the people. Now is the time. It's great to be part of it with everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And please join us again whenever you can. Fill your mind with positive thoughts, connections, energy, and media like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.
Mm.
Bye.